All right, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'll call this meeting to order on this, Councillor Troy Sorensen's birthday. Councillor Chenard recently celebrated a birthday as well. Can I get a motion, please, that the agenda for the February 19th, 2019 regular meeting of council be adopted as presented? And Councillor Chenard will make that motion.
I was going to let the birthday boy do it, but he wasn't used to, so
Any questions, comments, or concerns? Hearing none. All those in favor? Motion carried. We have no public hearings. We do have a delegation this evening from the Edson Soccer Association, so I'd like to welcome them up. And go ahead.
Mr. Mayor, there is a adoption of the previous minutes there.
Oh, yes.
Which I've done. I adopted them.
Okay. Sorry about that. Councillor Wilkinson makes that motion. Any questions, comments, or concerns? Hearing none. All those in favor? Motion carried. All right. We'll welcome up the Edson Soccer Association. What we'll do here is we'll quickly introduce ourselves, and then you can get into your presentation. So we'll start with Councillor Byer.
Hi, I'm Councillor Crystal Byer.
Councillor Troy Sorensen.
Councillor Janet Wilkinson.
Mayor Kevin Zahara.
Councillor Jean Schneider.
Councillor Jackie Curry.
Trevor Bevan.
And if you want to introduce yourselves.
I'm Steve Levarsky, President of Edson Minor Soccer.
And Lacey Riley, the Vice President of Edson Minor Soccer.
All right, thank you.
Okay, so we've prepared just a small slideshow, I guess, within regards to the user fees. We've had a lot of discussion about it. We'll touch on a bunch of points, and then we'll kind of drive to where we're going with the actual presentation. So just an overall overview of Edson Minor Soccer. This is kind of a rough idea of what we do. We start generally when the snow melts. Sometimes it's within a couple weeks, sometimes as much as a month, depending on how the snow goes. We've been lucky a couple of years and been able to get on early. We've got two divisions. We've got a travel league and we've also got a house league. Our house league is pretty straightforward. Most have 2 nights a week. You've got kids from 3 years old to 17 years old. When you get into the travel league, it's a little more similar to hockey, where you're traveling, you're practicing twice a week on the fields. You're then traveling to other communities playing within the Northwest Central Division. We're 100% volunteer-based, I guess, is another point to make there. So our timeline for the season, February 14th, we posted our seasonal rates. March 6th are our AGM this year. That does change from year to year. We generally try and be within that area. We used to have an on-site, but it's less important now. Most stuff is online, so we don't register necessarily. We open registration that day, but we don't necessarily have people physically there. Registration closes April 14th. April 29th is generally our tentative start date. Again, it could be within a couple of weeks of that. It's not necessarily firm. It depends on weather. So when we were here last, or I was here last time, there was a lot of discussion about fairness to user groups. And that was kind of the major point that I noticed that a lot of the counselors had mentioned, that they needed to be fair depending on who you were dealing with. And I do have a bit of an issue with that. I don't think we're comparing apples to apples when we start talking about fairness with the one group that is paying user fees. Repsol Place is a pay-to-use facility. They have individuals using it, they have groups using it, they're all paying a fee to use it. When you're dealing with soccer fields, you're not dealing with that. You're dealing with a user group, which happens in this area just to be youth. You're also dealing with people walking their dogs, you're dealing with people running their RCs, it's a green space, people are picnicking. You've got multiple things. I think the town even ran a wedding there last year, somebody used the gazebo. So it's not just soccer. It's used for 12 months of the year. Its primary use is definitely soccer, and that is for sure. We were always given primary on it, and we do appreciate that, obviously, because of the history of how it came to be. Our maintenance is significantly different, obviously. The arena's got year-round employees. We're running summer students that are cutting our grass in the summertime. I believe last year we aerated. In the past, we've done our own aeration and fertilization. That was handed over, not necessarily in exchange for user fees. At the time, that was not necessarily discussed. That, of course, became a discussion after the fact that we were now no longer doing the maintenance and the town was doing full maintenance. But again, that's not necessarily true. We do a lot of maintenance on those fields. We clean garbage once a year. We generally do a lot of the minor repairs, so things like the sheds get broken into, damage to the building. I think we had a doorknob knocked off last year. A lot of that stuff we just handle on our own, just because we have typically handled most stuff on our own, because it was a facility that was kind of run by ourselves. Typically, in the past, what's been done is the town has come in and cut our grass for us. And that has been a wonderful thing, obviously, because we don't have the ability to do that on our own. Now, obviously, the pool, the arenas, it's a much larger enclosed facility, so you've got utilities, you've got heat. I mean, a lot of the stuff is self-explanatory. The other thing, I guess, major thing of note is that the town with Repsol Place handles everything. Those user groups and those individuals that come into that facility, they walk into it and they walk out. It doesn't matter if it's the ice machine or if it is a dressing room, it doesn't matter. They walk in, they walk out, and that's what a paid facility is. That's not how we use the soccer fields. It's a completely different thing. We have to paint our lines. Again, we do a lot of minor repairs. We maintain the washrooms. We pay for all of the paper towel, the cleaning, all of that stuff is handled by us. So again, when the discussion took place last time, the statement was made that all maintenance was handled by the town of Edson, and that's not true. It's just not true. So now a comparison that I guess maybe gets a little closer, if you get into the skate park, you're talking about a green space that's used by a user group. Now this is not an organized user group, but it is a user group. There's a very specific person that's using that skate park. It's somebody that has a skateboard, rollerblades, a bike, and they're utilizing it. Unlimited access, both are very similar. You can walk onto the soccer fields anytime, you can walk into the skate park anytime. The utilities, we do have more utilities. Obviously within the washrooms there's utilities there. We only use those for 10 months of the year, bear in mind as well. So we have electricity, we don't have heat. We do have heaters that are electrical. They've never been turned on the whole time I'm there. So the water, I believe last year, I don't think we watered last year actually at all. So it's just washroom consumption of water. As opposed to the skate park, you're talking about just lights. I mean, there's a light there and it lights the area. That's all. Unless somebody knows differently, that's all that's there as far as I know. The facility itself, you've got the original concrete park, you've got the pump track, you've got the grass surrounding the area. For us, you've got buildings, spray park, or no, sorry, this is my bad, the spray park. You've got the town handling all maintenance on the skate park. So again, people show up, they use the facility, they leave. The town handled everything there. Not really the case with us. But you're still dealing with the same thing. You've got people coming and going, they're utilizing an area, it's multi-use, but there is a primary user group in the area. Kinsman Spray Park is another example. They're a little different in the fact that their maintenance is probably a lot higher than ours, just because of the spray park portion of it, of course. But you do have some similarities. There's a lot of grass to be cut there. You've got groups and individuals are welcome to use it free of charge. They can walk in and out. It's not a controlled area. You've got some outbuildings. You've got the spray park, you've got the play structures. As far as the utilities, I'm not 100% sure what's there these days. I know there used to be utilities within the one building. You've got electrical and water, lights, all of that good stuff. Construction, as far as I understand, was with Kinsman. I'm sure probably with some support from the town as well. Very similar to us, where we constructed it, but there was the town allowed us to do it on their land. So they have a participation in it for sure. Some other areas as well, you're getting into a little bit different with your mountain bike park. They're just getting started. I know the town has helped them. I'm a mountain biker. I'm very much in favor of that. Centennial Park, you've got a lot of the concerts and stuff that are held there. Same thing, it's a green space. It has to be mowed. It's used by multiple people. Your dog park, lower maintenance for sure there. You've probably got a little bit of grass to do. But my point with these other areas is that they all are being utilized in a similar fashion. We're not asking them to pay user fees. And the reason we're not asking them, I'm not silly, I understand why, and it's because you can't. It's very hard to do that with a lot of those facilities unless you're going to set them up as a pay facility. So why is it that because it's easy to apply it to minor sports, we now want to apply a fee to them? I don't think that's fair. I think because it's easy doesn't make it the right way to do it. With all, and I guess of note, not all residents use all facilities. As a town, we decide which facilities we want to have, and then we support them through general tax. And that's another place that I'm going with the multiple facilities as well. So when you deal with soccer, not everybody uses the soccer fields, and that's probably the best argument I've heard for it. I've read a couple of comments online, and that's a great argument. But the problem with that is I have kids as well. My kids don't use the skate park. They don't use the spray park. They're too old. They were. But that doesn't mean I'm not in favor of that. I think we should have those facilities. But that's a shared use through taxation, and that's what a town does. You decide what you want to provide. You tax people to upkeep those areas. When you're dealing with extremes like the arena, you're now dealing with a completely different level of financial commitment, and that's why it has to be a paid use facility in my eyes. So the user fee timeline, we had met originally on November 5th. We'd had a discussion with minor ball as well there, and a couple other groups, I'm not exactly sure. I think rugby was there, and I believe adult, slow pitch as well, yes. So we had a discussion about it. At that point, we decided we were going to leave it. They were going to further research. Jim was going to do some further research, decide what their fee was going to be, and they were going to get back to us. Now this, I can't lie, I'm a little disappointed with. On January 21st then, we find out within 24 hours of when they're presenting to you guys, hey, we've decided on a number, we're now presenting it. We were led to believe there would be some discussion, that we would have discussion about it, we would kind of work some of the kinks out at that point. It didn't really happen that way, and it did definitely leave a sour taste, for sure. From there we moved on. I sat in on the committee of the whole meeting. At that point we had a discussion with Mike, Jim and myself and Lacey. We're pretty far apart. It's not that we're unwilling to discuss it, it's just that we're really far apart. And for that reason, the main thing we're looking for today is a commitment to push this back, at least for the year. We have 2 weeks until our AGM. We have to add those fees when we do our registration. Because of that, it kind of puts us in a real precarious situation. We're a nonprofit, so any money we have left over is generally reinvested in some way, shape, or form. And that's, of course, what we plan to do every year. We can't take on, as it stands right now, I think it would be roughly $6,500 in fees and just absorb it. That's just not where we are. So I guess another thing to mention as far as those fees might be that $20 doesn't seem like a lot of money, but when you start adding it up with 2 or 3 people or 2 or 3 kids within a family, it is now a lot of money. And that's kind of what I'm hearing is a lot of people with multiple kids are really upset about this because it is going to affect them for sure. And as far as the gap between us and the town of Edson with the fees, if that was something the town wanted to push forward with. A lot of the gap, once you get past that discussion, is the $20 fee doesn't match up at all with what anybody in the area is paying. And it's about 4 times difference from what other people that are comparable within the area that you can compare with. There are hourly fees, there's per kid fees, there's per team fees. The team and kid fees are really easy to break down and compare, and that's what we've done. We've left the hourly fees out because you have to have their schedule to compare those, but when you do compare those, based on population, we're not even close. Like, you're talking $5 most communities, and we're asking 20 is where we're opening up at. Now, from what I understand, your guys' budget has already been earmarked for maintenance this year, and I guess that kind of, again, pushes towards, I'd really like to see this pushed off so we can have a little more discussion about it. And everybody's gonna feel then, at least at that point, like they've had their say, and where it lies is where it lies. At least we can make a good informed decision, in my thought.
Okay, does that conclude your presentation?
That is all.
Steve and Lacey, thank you very much for taking the time to be here today and present the information. I think there's lots of good information that you shared with us today. As you know, at the committee meeting, we did have a discussion saying that we're not really in a big rush to make this happen. So we're going to take all information into account before we make our decision. We're not going to get into a debate or any decisions tonight, but I'll open the floor to questions. Go ahead, Councillor Chenard.
Actually, thank you for your presentation. I totally agree. I like your comparisons. The other thing is because I was involved in soccer as well, so I understand where you're coming from. So I believe your argument is very strong to us. So therefore it is in the budget, and I believe for us to be fair to you, if we give it a year for people to absorb, because I am echoing your comment for people that have 2 and 3 in a family, to some people, you know, $20, what is that? But to these young growing families, that $20 might make a difference. Are they playing soccer or not? And yeah, I mean, you guys done your homework. Some of the points you pointed out with comparisons, I have to totally agree that we need to give you more time to have an argument.
And to that point, I can provide backup for any of that. If anyone wants to see where these communities are at, I've got soccer clubs, and I've also got lots of the towns as well, with the fees to kind of solidify that this is what they're actually paying.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Byer, and then Councillor Sorensen. And Councillor Wilkinson.
Through your worship, I've got a couple of questions and comments.
Sure.
So, at our recent most recent youth council meeting, we brought this up for discussion with them, and something that was of concern to me last time was the Edson Kids in Sport and the Jumpstart programs and how well they were used or not, and most of the kids hadn't actually heard of the programs. And once we started talking about what those programs were, we asked, you know, like, if for the ones that had heard of it, you know, where did you see this information? And they felt that there was maybe lacking some information about those programs. And we do realize that sometimes when kids aren't looking for something, they don't notice it.
Yeah.
So that's a possibility as well. But we did want to explore some ways to get the other kids just to know that those programs are out there for families that are struggling. And I was just wondering if Edson Manor Soccer had a role with that as well for registration.
Absolutely. Can I?
Yes, no,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Absolutely, we do have families that utilize the Kids in Sport. I do not believe that we've had anybody utilize Jumpstart to this point. However, the parents are aware that Kids in Sport and Jumpstart are out there, and the parents are utilizing those programs. Understandably, trying to get it to the kids is a different situation, and allowing them to have the knowledge of it. However, the parents are utilizing those programs. When it comes to Edson Manor Soccer, we do have families that use them every year.
Okay, perfect.
And as somebody that coaches a team, and I have had somebody in need within the team, you would be surprised how resistant people are to open their financials to a group like that. And it's both of those do extremely good work, and they don't mean to be invasive. They have to be. They have to verify funds so that they're not being taken advantage of. But people don't like that. They really don't. So for that reason, using that as what's a good word to use, a backdrop or something to catch those people that maybe aren't going to be able to make it. We want to use that sparingly because most people just won't. They'll just walk away and they won't put their kids in sports.
Which has
because
also
it's-
happened.
Which happens a lot.
Okay, go ahead.
And another question through your worship. What does Edson Minor Soccer use with the fees it collects? So you talked about collecting fees, and I child and soccer as well, but what do you use with those funds?
So we purchase soccer balls with the younger kids when you get into up till, what is it, U13, I believe. We provide a soccer ball, and the reason we do that is because there's different size soccer balls for different groups. If you don't provide the proper size of ball, they don't show up with the proper size of ball. Everybody shows up with a size 5 ball because your Canadian Tires, your Ron's Outdoors, they only carry size 5 balls. That is the purpose of that. It also goes towards insurance. We have to pay an insurance on the younger kids through a third party. We also then have to pay through ASA, which is actually through Northwest Central, but it's our ASA governs Northwest Central governs us. So we have to pay their insurance, and that's per child. That's actually a fairly significant amount of money. Within the travel groups, we have tournaments built into them. So they have 2 tournaments they attend every year. We try and use the same tournaments so that families with multiple kids, which seems to be common in soccer, can then attend both of their kids' games because we're always going to the same tournaments. We do Camrose and Sherwood Park every year. We do photos, so that covers their photos. We do lines and supplies for the field house as well. As I'd mentioned, we handle our washrooms, we handle a lot of our own stuff. Our line painting is a very, very significant expense for us as well. It has to be done once a week, and the painter as well as the paint is quite expensive. And then just general use soccer equipment. We have nets, we have pylons, we have flags. As you can imagine with that stuff, when you give it out to volunteers, some comes back, some doesn't come back. So there's always a certain amount of upkeep with that as well.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Sorensen.
Thank you. Actually, Councillor Bear just asked my question, but can you remind me again, what are your fees for this year? Or
What are our current fees for
Yeah.
this year? It varies depending on age group. I don't have it on me. I believe that it is, what's the bottom line for the U5s?
70, I think, for the young ones is the cheapest.
It's on Facebook.
Yeah, I was gonna say, or if I may, if you email that to us, we can forward it on.
Yeah,
to council
absolutely.
as well.
I can send that to you for sure. It's on our website though as well.
And your nonprofit societies, your financials are public knowledge?
Yeah, absolutely.
If you could provide that, that'd be great as well.
Sure.
Thank you, Councillor Sorensen. Councillor Wilkinson.
Okay, to the chair. First off, I'd like to thank you very much for your presentation. Really enjoyed where you did the comparison of the different facilities. Sort of makes you realize, yes, what you're comparing. And does the town take registrations for you at the central registration, or does your club do that themselves?
We do our own registrations with soccer players. We then schedule through the town, and they
To
hold
get the
the
time.
fields. Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. They hold the fields. Like I said, we've always had first priority on those fields, which is certainly something we
And who
appreciate.
built the soccer fields?
We did. No, actually, that's not a true statement.
Uh-huh.
We did not. We, through grants, volunteer time, and donations, we did a large chunk of it. The town provided the land
Right.
and has certainly helped out in other ways through the years. I'm only familiar with this last year. And one of the things that the town did do, and my understanding was, it was to support the aeration and fertilization. They would give us a lump sum of money to handle that. That's through discussion with
Yeah,
previous
but I was just
people.
wondering, I thought at one time you had summer students who did the mowing
No.
for the soccer fields.
Well, I shouldn't
I
say
think-
that.
I
I'm
think
not
you did
100%
before.
sure. We might
Yeah.
have, yes. As long as I've been involved, I believe the town has done the mowing, but that's
Mhm.
only,
But if you're nonprofit, like it could be possible that you could get summer students.
it's possible.
Mhm.
Yeah.
We have had
We
summer
have had
students
in
in
the
the
past.
past.
Right.
Yeah. We did not have a summer student last year.
Right.
And that was a decision that we made as an executive. We made a lot of decisions as an executive last year, it being our first year, to
Right.
be very tight on all of our financials, to make sure that we would have success in our first year and be able to move forward. We held back on a lot of expenditures that we would have otherwise maybe released and been okay with, including new equipment and stuff like that, which we'll then probably have to purchase this year as a result to make sure that we were going to be okay for last year. Summer students was one of those expenses that we were not 100% sure whether the grant that you would get would be able to cover the summer students fully, and we didn't. We wanted to make sure that we didn't get a student halfway through the year and say we can't pay you. So we chose not to go that route because we did not have all of the information.
And thank you very much for the work you do and provide an opportunity for kids to play soccer. My kids played soccer, and to me it's a real plus in this town to have all the soccer teams that we have, plus the tournaments coming to town. Certainly that is quite something for Edson.
Yes, and
So
then
thank
we
you.
bring the zones and the provincials as much as we can.
Right.
And that's the only tournaments that we are able to provide to the town of Edson, because we won't compete with the larger ones.
No, but you do. So thank you.
Yep, thank you. Councillor Curry and then Councillor Bell.
Just when you're sending that email, I would love to see the comparables that you have.
Sure.
So if you do that with the finances and the other stuff that was sent. I do agree with user fees for the sense that the difference between casual users and a registered sport is the amount of maintenance. So it is a huge, huge discrepancy between what we do in our fields that are for casual versus what we do in ones that are being maintained on a regular basis. However, I do agree with you. I would like, and I stated that in the committee of the whole, I would like to see a formula based on expenses. So I would definitely like to see that comparables, and I do think that a formula needs to be established based on the actual cost that it costs us, not a blanket.
Yeah, and there was a discussion about 40% on the last meeting. The problem with 40%, again, is it really depends on how those fees are allocated, where they're being allocated, the way that it's been done in the past, because you guys have just absorbed that cost into your Parks and Rec. Those are not really dialed in. We have 1 year's history of it, and we've had a lot of discussion about that with it getting into super detail, but there's some big problems with how it's been done, and it can be fixed for sure, but that formula would have to take that into account, and then there's also got to be some trust there that things are being allocated that are supposed to be allocated to those areas.
For sure. Thank you.
Right.
Sorry, through the chair.
That's right. Councillor Bevan and then Councillor Meyer.
Through the chair, if you don't mind the soccer here. Thanks again. I've also had a lot of people come up to me and, saying that they would like us to hold off for at least another year here and go back and talk about this and that. With the economy to be in the way it is, that, one of the parents is working, maybe both of them aren't working, and that the time they play soccer and they've got 3 kids, they can't afford it right now. They also agree that there has to be some kind of a user fee. What, they don't know. I would also like to see the comparisons myself and that, and then we can sit down again. And if we decide to hold off for maybe this year and we go to our strategic planning meeting, we can see all you guys have, what we have. We can talk about this in great depth and length here and come up with a solution, and get back to you guys within a reasonable time so you guys can take a look at it and give back to us, and not all of a sudden 2 weeks we're going to slap something on this or that. I'd like to give as much time on either side as we can to have all the information that we need. I know there are other groups in town, whether it's the adults or whatever, do pay on certain things around town here and that, and I think it's fair we sit down and we find something that is agreeable with you guys and with us, and I know there's my grandkids play soccer and that, and there's usually 3 or 4 of them in there, and one family has 3 members in there, and they said the same thing, that another $60, and they go to early registration, a lot of these people, because they get to save that $20. So, if they go save 20 and all of a sudden they got to pay it back up front again. The reason early registration is to save that $20.
Yeah, and that is a challenge we have as well, in the fact that we have that early registration. It's for planning, and that's why we give such a deep discount on that early registration. But then it gives you a lot of uncertainty as far as your funding as well, because you never really know until everything hits where you're going to be at. And that was one of the challenges we had last year. We turned over a lot of our board. We had a lot of new faces, not a lot of history, and we really, really we're feeling our way through the dark, so.
And that's it, as the kids grow older, they leave, and so does your volunteer base.
Yeah,
New people come in,
absolutely.
you're back to square one again, so it gets a little tougher on a lot of stuff in that, so.
Yeah.
For sure, so thank you for your presentation.
Councillor Byer and then CEO Derricott.
Through your worship to CAO Derricott, do you have the information on what we spend on our operating costs for the time period of the soccer fields? Like, was the information we were provided with earlier on the entire 12 months, or is it just on the time that the soccer fields are being used? And is there a lot of maintenance required outside of the off season or outside of their on season?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so no, those numbers were general maintenance of the fields. I wouldn't call it over the soccer season, but over the spring and summer season. They're very passive in the winter. We're not doing anything active there. There's no utility costs or anything like that. But they do cover from when the snow melts until by mid-September. Generally, grass isn't growing so much anymore, and there's not a lot of costs after that. So it generally covers what we would consider to be the growing season rather than the soccer season specifically.
Okay, Councillor Byer.
And one more question through the chair to CAO Derricott. Is there extra maintenance required on the soccer fields as far as the way the grass is cut or the frequency compared to the other parks in town?
Through the chair, there's very many levels of standards that you can have for turf management and turf maintenance. I would by no means suggest that we are maintaining ours at a World Cup kind of soccer level, but there are some small differences in how you treat in terms of amount of aeration and fertilizer and the cutting schedule. It really depends on the anticipated use of the park and the space, but playing fields or active fields such as baseball or soccer are generally receiving a little bit of a higher level of grass cutting maintenance than just a passive park.
All right, thank you. Did you have something else you wanted to add?
Yeah, no, I was just going to suggest, Mayor, that administratively speaking, I think we've already eclipsed the point where it would make any sense for us to apply a fee this year, just for the feedback of the table. And this was something we discussed when Steve and Lacey came to meet with us, where we had already acknowledged that, hey, no, we're totally understanding of the point that it's not really tenable for them to receive a notification, 1 week, or if their registration's already open or their AGM is only a few weeks away. And so I certainly don't feel administratively that there's any reason why we wouldn't say we're not going to, be at a place where I think it would be effective to try and apply a fee prior to their AGM and their registration process.
Okay, thank you. Thank you both for taking the time to be here today and present your information. Once again, we'll take it all into account before we make any decisions, and we'll be in contact and communication with you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys.
All right. Can I get a motion, please, that Councillor Sorensen be appointed as Deputy Mayor commencing March 1st, 2019 and expiring the first day of July 2019.
I'll make that motion.
Councillor Curry
Monica's done
excitedly
with them,
makes
eh?
that
We're adopting
motion.
them out.
Any questions, comments, or concerns? Go ahead, Councillor
Being
Chenard.
his birthday today, did you realize what you're signing up for? Are you sure you want to do this?
You don't have a
Do it. It's
choice.
part of the job.
Okay, well then I'm going to vote in favor.
All right, we'll call the question. All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion carried. Can I get a motion, please, that council authorizes the mayor to sign the form letter of support prepared by Integral Strategy Network addressed to the Parkland County Smart Cities Coordinator. Councillor Bevan will make that motion. And he was there and he stepped away. So I think it's pretty self-explanatory. The memo is in your package there. There was a presentation, I believe, at FCM. I think it was FCM or AUMA about this, where we've seen Yellowhead County participating in this, and I think it's a great thing. But Councillor Byer?
Through your worship, I just wanted to make a comment. I think this is a great collaboration of the counties working together to achieve a common goal. Any successes that they receive, the residents will benefit from, as well as their surrounding communities, and their goals of a prosperous economy, more safe and secure region, and leading edge connectivity are no doubt desirable by more than just the counties themselves. So that would be great for all of Canada. And if we can assist them to bring them up to a higher level on these topics, I feel it is a benefit to us as well. So I fully support this and hope they're successful.
All right, thank you, Councillor Byer. Councillor Chenard.
Actually, just a comment, because you're right, I think it was talked about at AUMA as well as FCM. So there's one of the values that we gain by going to either one of the two. It's, I'd like to comment, it's working with the other groups, it's our chance to talk to these groups. So that would be part of a bonus of FCM or AUMA would lead up to some of these letters being formed. So just a comment on that.
All right, any other further questions, comments, or concerns? I just want to say I think it's great that we're able to support Yellow County in something, and look forward to sending this letter. So I'll call the question. All those in favor? Motion carried. Can I get a motion, please, that council authorizes the mayor to sign the form letter prepared by the Alberta Airports Management Association addressed to the local MLA? And Councillor Byer will make that motion. Any?
Can I make an amended motion?
Sure.
Okay, can I amend that to address to the local MLA in addition to the other parties that are running? I believe when I looked online, the Liberal Party has candidates because this resolution won't be passed before the election. Like, this will be going to the September AUMA, and the election will be happening sometime this spring. So our current MLA may not be the current MLA, so I would like it to go to all parties.
So to the local MLA and all
Running candidates, I guess?
all local candidates?
Okay, sure,
Okay.
how that wording works.
All right, any questions, comments, or concerns? Councillor Chenard.
I have to agree, but I think we have to be cautious because we're writing it to the MLA. We have to write it to the present MLA. I just think we have to check on it because there's no harm in it, I agree, but I think it's got to be addressed to the MLA. And then after the election, whoever the MLA is, either stays the same or changed at that time, because I'm just looking at the legal end, can we do that?
Yeah, we certainly can. We'll just be CC'd to everybody else.
So we can do it. I don't have a problem with that.
It's normal for that to occur, that something be sent to your member of the legislature or a minister, and it's CC'd to other political parties. So.
Okay, then I have no problem with it.
Okay, any other questions, comments, or concerns? Hearing none, all those in favor? Motion carried. Can I get a motion, please, that council direct administration to begin working on bringing a resolution forward to the Alberta Urban Municipalities Association membership in support of additional community airport program funding? And we have the eager Councillor Troy Sorensen making that motion. Any questions, comments, or concerns? Hearing none, all those in favor? Motion carried. Can I get a motion, please, that council direct the two appointed voting members of the Community Futures West Yellowhead Board to vote on behalf of the town of Edson at the CFWI Special General Meeting on March 7th, 2019 as follows: in favor of removing the town of Grant Cache as a member of the company, in favor of adding the Municipal District of Greenview as a member of the company, and in favor of the proposed amendments to the Articles of the Association. Councillor Wilkinson will make that motion. Any questions, comments, or concerns? Go ahead, Councillor Bevan.
Yeah, I thank council for that. I know it'll pass here. I know when Grant Cache was on board with the Community Futures and that, they brought a lot of information to us and that. They were good voting members, great people in that. I'm glad now that they're going to be coming back to the table here. When we give loans out or whatever and stuff like that, it only encompasses them, but it also encompasses us too, and that in our surrounding areas and that. And I'm looking forward to heading up there in March 7th and that, and meeting whoever is on that board. I think it'll be great. Community Futures does a great job all through West Yellowhead, and I love to see them come back on, so I think it's going to be good for us to be involved with them.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Chenard.
I should know the answer, but is this the first time Greensview is a member, or were they previously a member from?
Not the Community Futures of West Yellowhead. No.
So this is the first time?
This is first. They had to get rid of the two of their members.
No. What I mean is Greensview, prior to taking over Grant Cache, were they members of the Northern?
Yeah, they
Yes.
are part of, now this will be the third, sorry, Char.
Yeah.
The third Community Futures that they're a part of.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions, comments, or concerns? Hearing none, all those in favor? Motion carried. We have no information items and no sundry items. We'll move down to council committee reports. And today we're going to start with Councillor Wilkinson.
Thank you. February 6th, I went to a board meeting for the Evergreens Foundation, and we had a vote on building a new building in Hinton. On the 7th, I attended the Historical Society meeting for Councillor Curry. She was away. They're hoping to have a walk May Day declared which I have talked to Kayla about. We'll be going forward. On February 12th, I had a steering committee meeting, and then a committee as a whole meeting. On February 14th, I went to the lawyer we use, Brown Lee, and listened to their day. I really enjoyed their discussion on the design build, and I hope it's a concept that we can explore in depth. And the following day, I went to another lawyer's presentation, and I really enjoyed their one on collecting taxes. And the Reeve of Woodlands, I believe is Mr. Haverstock. He asked great questions regarding the linear assessment and collection from different companies that have gone bankrupt or in receivership. And this is really quite a problem in Alberta at the present time. And that's my report.
All right, thank you, Councillor Wilkinson. Councillor Sorensen.
Okay, February 11th, I was on a subcommittee meeting working on the operational agreement with the Edson District Recycling Society. Later that day, we had our second monthly youth council meeting. Some great discussion on recreational user fees and communicating with youth. February 14th and 15th, I also went to both municipal law seminars, gained a lot of good situational type of information on what the worst things that could happen legally in contract law. February, just today, I was part of the youth council meeting with Parkland. That was a lot of fun.
All right, and Councillor Wilkinson joined us on that as well.
That's not a committee.
Councillor Byron.
Okay, on February 7th, I attended the Synergy meeting. We had some really interesting discussion around wildfires and wildfires in the winter, because we normally only have them in the summer, so that was brought some really good discussion to the table and how prepared we are, and the Yellowhead County really stepped up to the plate in December during the Rob wildfire by Rob. And then had the youth council meeting on February 11th. Like Councillor Sorensen said, great discussion around field fees. And then another really interesting thing that was brought up was how they collect their information, because it's different from how we collect our information. So we kind of took some different polls in what the various methods of collecting information, whether it's you know, like the newspaper or radio or different apps and like youth apps and or posters at their school, and just kind of to learn how they find out about things. And then I also attended the law seminar on February 15th, and as mentioned already, it was really interesting with learning about all the things that can go wrong with the contract if you know you don't have things worded properly and your case stated ahead of time. So yeah, it was really great.
All right, thank you. Councillor Bevan.
Thank you, Mayor. 14th, I attended the recycling meeting here for Councillor Sorensen as he was off having Valentine's Day fun.
That is seminar.
Yeah. So, anyway, it was good. They received $50,000 for the SIP grant for building a reuse center, and that they're looking into that. They will be going out and looking at other communities here to see how they do their buildings and what they accept, and if there's any kind of a fee to them, or if they, you know, give it away. They want contractors to give whatever they can to bring down there. It should take a lot of the stuff out of our landfill here for doors, windows, you name it, stuff like that. It's almost like Habitat for Humanity, and that's what they kind of like to do in that. And there's a lot of people out there now that are already asking them, are they going to be doing something? Can they take their leave of that? They don't have a thing right now in that, eh? To continue to work with Pine Grove and the progress with the new waste diversion program. Want to finalize plans for warehouses for in-house waste diversion strategies, and they are applying for additional funding grants. They're working with a pilot agriculture plastics group for the county and that for their wraps on their bales and stuff like that. So that's a big one for them. The county is very happy to work with them and bring it into their facility if they can do it. Prices have changed a little bit there. They were able to get rid of some of the stock they had there. Some prices came back up for them, and some prices dropped. So they continue to monitor it very, very closely. And as the prices come up, they jump on it right away to at least get rid of it, get a few more dollars in their bank account on that. And they're just in the planning stage of looking at all their books and everything else, and they're moving forward in that. And it actually was a very good meeting in that. There was a lot of input around there, and that was great. That is my report.
All right, thank you, Councillor Curry.
Okay, thank you. On February 11th, I also was at the subcommittee with the Recycling Society. Great meeting. On the 13th, I had the chamber meeting. Just a couple things that I wanted to remind people of, just because Grand Yellowhead did their update just for youth council people. Their engagement that is on the 12th at Parkland is being ran by the Superintendent Council. So I just think it'd be a really great time to kind of see a group of youth running an engagement session. So for anybody that can make it to that one, just a really great way to be engaged, but to just see the way that our youth council could be used. Dates to remember, April 26th and 27th is the trade show. March 20th at 1 p.m. is the AGM. So they would love to have us all there again, recognizing that it's during the day this time, so it might be a little bit harder. And just that the summer festival is booked for the July 10th to 12th. And then I also attended the lawyer workshops on Friday and learned about, well, what I learned was we should phone our lawyers first. Always. The number one best decision, always phone your lawyer first. Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Curry. And if I could just ask Ms. Sedor, just send a calendar invite for that chamber AGM. Thank you. Councillor Schnarr.
Okay, on February 11th, I attended the PAC meeting as the West Fraser. Two interesting highlights, January being unseasonably warm. That put a halt to their hauling of trees, so they're a little bit behind. They mark them as the Alberta government, I was going to say fines them, but they were getting in trouble because they were making ruts in January in the dirt, so it put a halt on there. So that was very, you're looking at it, whose fault is it? And then the other interesting, with February being really cold, they're still unsure of the pine beetle. With it warm in January, they may have came closer to the surface, and you need at least 1 week of consecutive weather of -20, and as we all know, we surpassed that. Some areas were 30, so it's going to be interesting to see how much effect that this warm cold had on the pine beetle. February 12th was the committee of the whole meeting, and I guess we do report on going to the lawyers. And what stuck out for me is the lady got up there, and I won't say what they called her, but the lady that did dirt. So they said they called her the dirt lady. But it was very interesting, as the headline is that, but we don't realize the importance when we're going to do a project, is that dirt, how important the subdividing, who's paying for what. So the other comments are words, but that stuck out for me is the importance, because we used the lady when we were selling our Rex complex. So it's sort of into these buildings, so it's as echoed in this room. Check with your lawyers before you say, yeah, it's a wonderful idea. So I found it very fascinating. I just attended the Brown Lee one. I had to go home. It was my birthday, so I had to be home for birthday. So, but I was like going to both. I believe our council would got great value in that. So that's it for my report.
All right, thank you, Councillor Chenard. For me, February 11th, attended the Youth Council meeting. A really engaged group of youth who are actually going to be here next Tuesday for our Committee of the Whole meeting, and we'll try to fit everybody around the table. We'll see. I'm just so super impressed with these kids, and they don't hesitate to volunteer when they're asked to help out with different things. So on February 11th, I had the Recycling Society operational agreement meeting. We had some really good discussion there. February 12th, the Multiplex Steering Committee meeting. Committee of the Whole on the 12th as well. On February the 13th, I had a conference call with AUMA regarding policing and policing costs and the new contract. One of the things that we need to keep in mind is there currently, as you may know, that RCMP members have voted in favor of a union, and they're going to be coming up with new agreements. They're looking at making some investments in safety equipment, as well as there might be some increased costs in terms of policing, and it will be likely backdated. So they're recommending that we start budgeting 2.5% increase. Just so we are well prepared to absorb some of those costs. Really good conference call with them, and they're going to keep us up to date regarding what's going on with the policing agreement, and discussion as well, of course, with what we've been talking about AUMA about cost of policing and making sure everybody pays their fair share. On February 15th, I attended the Reynolds Mirth legal seminar. The best one was the last one of the day, where we found out surprisingly you can punch your boss in the face and not necessarily get fired. And then if you take a lunch break and staple one of your parts to a 4x4 and it gets posted on YouTube, you can actually be fired for that. So I won't get into the details, but it was quite the amusing
That was a good-
presentation. Yeah. And then today, Youth Council was at Parkland Lodge for Random Acts of Kindness Week, and that's my report. Go ahead.
Just one comment, so we can get all of our youth council to join us at the table. I look forward to that. I believe with the youth council, it's gonna be very interesting. That's next Tuesday.
Next
Can't have
Tuesday.
fidgeters here.
No touching.
I think you put a Councilor Chenard and Councilor Chenard on each side.
I don't think I can handle that. We have no financial reports. Questions for media and public regarding items from this council meeting?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Can you just tell me what all the town maintains in the soccer fields and what the soccer association maintains?
I think what the town maintains is grass, fertilizing, aeration. At this point, I think the Minor Soccer Association talked about how they're maintaining washrooms and cleanup and that sort of thing. So,
Okay.
yeah, and of course they do their own lines as well. Okay. Any other questions? No other questions? Okay. We have no in-camera items. I'll call the question. All those in favor of adjournment?
We need a motion.
Motion from Councillor Chenard.
Always.
Come on. Motion from Councillor Chenard. All those in favor? Motion carried.